Welcome back to the Physics of Faith podcast. I'm Tim.
I'm Tommy.
And today we're going to be reading Daniel chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. Right. So
Another vision.
Another vision. All of these chapters here out are going to be visions that Daniel had.
And this again is in a completely different time as the one that we read in chapter 7. This is a whole other vision and a whole other time in Daniel's life.
Yeah, I think this is like maybe 2 years later.
Yeah.
What we're looking at.
Yeah, so not a completely different, I should say, but
not a different era, but a different time, All right. Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and just dive in here because, we could talk about this, but it'd be better to read it.
Yeah.
All right. So Daniel chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. I looked in the vision, and while I was looking, I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Ulai canal. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram which had 2 horns was standing in front of the canal. Now the 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other, with the longer one coming up last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, and southward, and no other beast could stand against him, nor was there anyone to rescue from his power. But he did as he pleased and made himself great. All right, we'll stop right there.
Yeah, so not completely. 2 years later, basically. 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, and chapter 7 was in the 1st year. So
right. Yeah, so 3rd year, Belshazzar. I can't imagine Belshazzar lasts much longer than this. And if Daniel had these dreams, it really gives you a whole different perspective on how he then comes in when Belshazzar sees the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you wonder, so he talks about how this is a vision. Is this a dream, or is this something that a vision that he sees while he's actually awake?
I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah.
Because I think it absolutely could be, like if it's a dream, you say it's a dream, but if it's a vision, it could be either or.
Yeah.
But I think visions are just more vivid and interactive.
Yeah, you're seeing something.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're being shown something, and it's obvious to you, right?
Yeah.
So he is in Shushan or Susa, which is actually the setting of the book of Esther. That's the same area that Esther's in.
Okay.
Right? Now, the Ulan Canal, or the Ulai Canal, would be known as the Julius to the Greeks.
The Julius?
Yes. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Eulaeus.
Okay.
It's Greek to me. All right. So he's standing there, and he sees this ram with 2 horns. One of the horns is longer than the other. And this is a representation of the Medo-Persians. So there is a 4th century historian named Ammianus Marcellinus who states that Persian rulers bore the head of a ram as they stood at the head of their army. The ram was the national emblem of Persia, and a ram being stamped on Persian coins as well as the headdress of Persian emperors.
Yeah.
Right. So the ram is Persia, and these 2 horns are the Medes and the Persians.
Yeah.
Persians being the primary, so that's the longer.
They're the
two
longer
horns,
ones. Yeah.
right?
They came up later.
Right. And now the ram pushes in 3 directions. I think it's northward, southward, and westward.
Yep.
Which are the 3 directions that the Medo-Persian kingdom actually expanded during its time.
There you go.
Yeah. Right. So, all right. So pretty interesting so far. You can see where, like, if you just read this, you'd be like, cool, a ram.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's like running places.
yeah. But when you add the context,
and its head is unbalanced because it's got 1 horn that's bigger than the other.
Right. When you add the context, it all kind of comes together.
Yeah.
Right? So let's read now verses.
And this isn't quite as freaky as the stuff in the first vision.
No.
Like, you could see, I can imagine a ram with 1 horn longer than the other running around.
Right. But as we continue, it's going to get a little weirder.
Right.
All right. So let's read verses 5 through 8 next. While I was observing, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the entire earth without touching the ground. The goat had a prominent horn between his eyes. He came up to the ram that had the two horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and rushed at him in his mighty wrath. And I saw him come up beside the ram, and he was enraged at him. And he struck the ram and smashed his two horns, and the ram had no strength to withstand him. So he hurled him to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one to rescue the ram from his power. And the male goat made himself exceedingly great. But once he became powerful, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 prominent horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven.
So a unicorn.
Yeah, well, a unigoat.
A unigoat, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't really know. Is a unicorn an actual horse? It could be a goat. I'll have to ask my daughter when I get home because she loves unicorns.
Well, I guess we should get her on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a male goat, and it's got a singular prominent horn. And this is interesting. So the goat is a representation of the Greeks.
Right.
Now, the
That
Greeks
just smashed the Medes and the Persians to pieces. Yep.
exactly. The Greeks were once called the goats people. And they also would have been coming from the west, which is the direction this goat is coming from.
Yeah.
Right. We also know that the rise of Greece was sudden, right? And this is explained under the portion that he never touches the ground, right?
Yeah.
He's quick and he flies across the face of the earth, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Greece just exploded on the scene when this happens, right? And that notable horn is the man behind it all, Alexander the Great. He led the Greeks in war against the Medo-Persians. So you've probably heard of him.
I heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, Greece wins. Greece wins that war. Now, here's what's interesting. We know that Alexander dies early, right? So he expands. He does all these great things. Great in a sense of like he conquers everything, right?
Yeah.
And goes all these places. But he then dies, and his empire is divided up among 4 new rulers. And those 4 rulers are Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. Yeah, thank you. And Ptolemy. So those are the 4 rulers, right? So historically, we are seeing like these prophecies from verses 8 through 11
Yeah.
are very specific.
Yeah.
And on the nose.
Right.
So it's pretty incredible. All right, so let's now talk about verses 9 through 14. So you've got these 4 horns. These are these 4 kings. And this is what verse 9 says. And out of one of them came a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew up to the heavenly lights, and some of the lights, that is, some of the stars, it threw down to earth, and it trampled them. It even exalted itself to be equal with the commander of the army, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And because of an offense, the army will be given to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and it will hurl truth to the ground and do as it pleases and be successful. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply, while the offense causes horror, so as to allow both the sanctuary and the army to be trampled? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. All right. So we get this little horn that grows exceedingly great, and you're already seeing like, this is feeling like the Antichrist from the previous one, right?
Yeah.
But this is where it's not. This is a type of the Antichrist. And like with the imagery, you could see how this feels very apocalyptic, right? This is the very end of times. But this little horn that grows exceedingly great is thought to be Antiochus IV, who comes from it's Seleucus' line. So one of the 4 things. So he's from Seleucus dynasty, right? He would end up ruling Syria and he would also rule Israel. But he would fight Ptolemy's group, who Ptolemy ends up in Egypt, right?
Okay.
And they end up fighting back and forth over Israel,
Okay.
right? And they're continually, not because they want Israel,
Yeah.
but because they're fighting each other, and that's between them.
In the way, yeah.
Right. So they keep going back and forth. So when he talks about the beautiful land, he's talking about Israel.
Right.
Right. Now, Antiochus IV would title himself Epiphanes, which means illustrious. So he was Antiochus Epiphanes. But the ancient Jews would call him Epimanes, which means madman. Because he was diabolical.
Yeah.
I think, like, if anybody fits the concept of an antichrist here, Antiochus IV would be one of these people, right? So Daniel is so spot on here with this because, like, some of the stuff that we see here. So he casts down the stars, right? And he tramples them. The stars are representation of the people of Christ, or the Jewish people, right? He exalts himself to be equal with the commander, capital C, of the army, which is God. Well, he calls himself illustrious, right?
Mm-hmm.
He titles himself illustrious. He removes the regular sacrifices. This is something that happens under Antiochus, is he commits the abomination of desolation, which ends sacrifice in the Jewish temple.
Okay.
Right. Now, as all of this is happening, like, this is so, like, when you line this up with what historically happens, this is so spot on that there are critics that would say that this means Daniel had to written this afterwards, right?
Yeah.
If you think about, like, how the ancient world did apocryphal literature, they often would take something that happened and then explain how their gods were part of it.
Yeah.
And how it showed their greatness.
Yeah.
But this is claiming to be before that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really important for us to know.
Right.
Like, this was prophesied before, not after.
Yeah. I mean, just in the same way that Daniel, he didn't just interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He told him what his dream was. And there was a reason that Nebuchadnezzar wanted to do that, because he didn't want him to just make something up and make it work, that as the other sorcerers and those other guys did. This was 100%. This can only come from a godly vision and a prophecy that comes straight from God.
Right. So this is what happens with Antiochus IV is described also in First Maccabees. And it is estimated that he would end up killing more than 100,000 Jews, or at the very least, when you tally up how many were killed and how many were put into slavery, it's well over 100,000, right?
Yeah.
And so the army, which in this, when they're talking about the army, they're talking about the people of God and the Jews, they're given over to him, right? God lets this happen. Yeah. It's part of his plan at this point. But, like, we already know that the chosen people are in Babylon right now because they broke covenant, right?
Yeah.
God allows these things to happen to them over and over again because they keep breaking covenant. But then he uses those things for his purposes.
Yeah.
Right? And then what happens is he actually ends up setting up, and we'll get into this more maybe later, he sets up in the sanctuary of the temple a idol for Zeus, but it's the Syrian Zeus, so it's actually like Baal.
Okay.
And he sacrifices a pig on the altar there. This is a huge issue. This is like
an unclean animal.
So this is like incredibly offensive. But this act of setting up this idol and sacrificing this pig there, this is the abomination of desolation. It causes the temple to become desolate. And it offsets 2,300 sacrifices, which is about 7 years worth of sacrifices.
Yeah.
And that aligns with Antiochus's reign over Jerusalem. So this 2,300 evenings and mornings before the sanctuary will be properly restored, that is what occurs with the temple basically being desolate at that time, right? So, as I've already said, Antiochus also mirrors the Antichrist with all of this imagery, right?
Yeah.
He is a boastful horn that humbles three others because he's one of those four kingdoms, but he's
Right. The
kind of-
boastful one, the one that's speaking a lot of offensive things. Yep.
he desecrates the temple. He is set against God's people.
Yeah.
If you read about him, you find out, man, he did not like the Jews.
Yeah.
And he was also very responsible for Hellenizing the Jews, which means he really was like, you have to give up your beliefs and adopt Greek beliefs.
Yeah.
Like that was his mark on the Jewish people. So this is like Antiochus the fourth is terrible when it comes to this history.
Yeah.
All right, so let's continue, and we're going to get the interpretation of the vision here in verse 15 through 19. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, and behold, standing before me was one who looked like a man, and I heard the voice of a man between the banks of Ulai, and he called out and said, Gabriel, explain the vision to this man. So he came near to where I was standing, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. And he said to me, Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end. Now, while he was talking with me, I was dazed with my face to the ground, but he touched me and made me stand at my place. And he said, Behold, I am going to inform you of what will occur at the final period of the indignation, because it pertains to the appointed time of the end. All right, so in these verses, Gabriel shows up, and a voice tells him, Gabriel, explain this to Daniel, right?
Yeah.
And so he says that, and he tells him that this is about the final period of the indignation as it pertains to the appointed time of the end. So I think this is a distinguishment between what will be fulfilled leading up to what will ultimately be the Messiah coming.
Yeah.
And that's that period of indignation, and then the end, which is when the Messiah comes again.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot of this prophecy that is fulfilled and a lot that will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we're not thoroughly confused, let's go ahead and we'll continue on to verses 20 through 27. The ram which you saw with the two horns represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat represents the kingdom of Greece, and the large horn that is between his eyes is the first king. The broken horn and the four horns that came up in its place represent four kingdoms which will arise from his nation, although not with his power. And in the latter period of their dominion, when the wrongdoers have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. And his power will be mighty, but not by his own power. And he will destroy to an extraordinary degree and be successful and do as he pleases. He will destroy mighty men and the holy people. And through his shrewdness, he will make deceit a success by his influence. And he will make himself great in his own mind, and he will destroy many while they are at ease. He will even oppose the prince of princes, but he will be broken without human agency. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which has been told, is true. But as for you, keep the vision secret, because it pertains to many days in the future. Then I, Daniel, was exhausted and sick for days. Then I got up and carried on the king's business, but I was astounded at the vision, and there was no one to explain it. All right. So I love that Gabriel comes and explains it to him, and at the end he says there was no one to explain it.
Yeah.
But I think to his point, there was no man that could explain this.
Right.
And even what Gabriel tells him, there's so much missing because it hasn't happened.
Well, and in you have the NASB, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have the NIV, and so 27, at the end of 27, it says, I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding.
Yeah.
So somebody could explain it to you, and you still not understand it.
That's true. Yeah. No, I've had many things explained to me that I didn't understand.
Right.
That's a good point. All right. So a lot of this that he explains, we've already explained. We've kind of covered this as we've been going down. So he talks about, hey, the ram, that's the Medo-Persians. The goat, that's the Greeks. The horn is the great king and the first king of the Greeks. And then it going to break up into 4 kings, right? And then there's going to, one of these kings is going to do all of these despicable things, right? Now, one of the things that's interesting here is that he says that this king will not be broken by human hands. Something that we know from history is that Antiochus IV died from disease, not war.
Okay.
So he did not end up dying by the hands of men.
Right.
And then once all of this is revealed, once this is all told, Daniel is distressed. He is sick, but he's got to go to work.
As you would imagine, yeah.
Right.
No sick days back in those times.
That's right. So he was exhausted and sick for days, but then he got up and he carried on the king's business. So he had a little leniency. Maybe he had a little PTO, but he he had to go back to work, and he had to try to keep this out of his mind.
Yeah.
And was told to keep it secret.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For it concerns the distant future. Yeah. And when you think about it, like how Daniel was a tremendous man of God. He was, wise and put above so many of these other rulers and the satraps and the wise men of the times. And if he was distressed by this, just imagine if he told this to other people. How, he explained the vision and the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was freaked out, and that was about him personally, in a way.
Yeah.
So if he had shared this with other people, it's like, this concerns the end times. Let's keep that to yourself.
You should probably get yourself checked out, Daniel.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think you're getting a little loopy.
Yeah.
So this is some amazing stuff. Again, very on the nose. It hits, and it's prophecy that comes to fruition within a few hundred years, and then it shows and showcases what will also happen at the end. Without necessarily talking about the Antichrist, it shows us a type of the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And then as we continue, we're going to get to chapter 9, and we're going to see more visions and more things that are going to happen here. And it's going to get crazy. We're going to get a little bit more apocryphal.
There you go.
All right. Well, anything else we want to talk about?
That's it.
Great. Well, that was chapter 8. When we come back, we're on chapter 9. We will see you all then.